Welcome to the Future Food Series by Zintinus and ProVeg Incubator. This time we are diving into the topic of algae, both micro and the macro, and their diverse applications in the food industry. Thanks for joining us. I am Albrecht Wolfmeyer from ProVeg Incubator, and this is my co-host Fabio Siemsen from Zintinus.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Fabio.
Hi. Hi, Albrecht.
Hi, everybody. Hey, what's new at Zintinus?
Yeah, hey, first of all, thank you very much for introducing us. And we are so excited for today's session because we have really so many applications, and we are expecting roughly 300 participants for today. And yeah, what's new at Zintinus? It was really an exciting start into this new year. We just had our first close, and for those who don't know who Zintinus is a growth fund looking into the sector of alternative protein, clean nutrition, and functional food, and of course also supporting technologies and enabling infrastructures. And we are looking into investments in the Series A and Series B sector. So whoever is interested, please get in contact with us. And yeah, and Albrecht, what's up with ProVeg Incubator? How was the start?
Thanks, Fabio. Yeah, in December we just closed the last cohort with our, the demo day, the festive event of each program round, and at the moment we are looking for new high-impact startups that want to join our program. So if you are a startup founder or you know someone who should join us, who's all about impact and taking animals out of the food equation, then please apply on provegincubator.com until the end of this month. So now, before we get to know our esteemed panelists for this session on algae, we would like to encourage the audience. Use the Q&A button here on Zoom to share comments and ask questions to the panelists, or share your opinion on whatever's going to be said here. And also, if you would like to spread the word about tonight's discussion on social media, please use the hashtag Future Food Series and also use food tech, so we can spread the word about this event.
Absolutely. And if you're an exciting company or you have something to share, then you can also use the chat function. So questions to our panelists over the Q&A button. And if you want to present yourselves, then you can do it via the chat function, so that we have also a little network event here and supporting the interactive style of our Future Food Series.
All right, thanks, Fabio. So let's get to know our 5 panelists tonight. So we have an exciting discussion ahead of us, and we would like just to quickly introduce everyone before we let them do the talking here. So tonight with us is Alexandra Mosch, Advisory Board Member at Allmicroalgae and Vice President of the European Algae Biomass Association. We have Alexander Goldberg, Professor at University of Tel Aviv and co-founder at the Seaweed startup Genesee. And we have Eugene Wang here joining us from Amsterdam tonight, the co-founder at Sophie's Bionutrients.
Yeah, and from New York, we have Alvin Severian, for the co-founder of Algae Foods, and Alex Goldberg, from the founder of Genesee.
Sorry, we're missing Jacob here.
sorry. Yeah, sorry, Jacob.
No problem.
Live from Berlin. Yeah, Jacob von Manteuffel, the founder of Ocean Fruit. And Better Fish.
And Better Fish, yeah, lots of things to talk about and to showcase. So yeah, we'll kick it off with a short presentation by Alexandra about the market, about the aspects of algae, about the nutritional aspects, and yeah, the potential that we are going to talk about. Alexandra, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I look forward to this panel discussion, and I hope you see my screen now. Can you see it, Albrecht? Can you confirm that? Yes,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, fantastic. So yeah, so let's give a brief introduction. I think all of us are aware of climate change and how much this affects all of our foods, and also the possibilities to grow crops in future with the current farming systems. And we all know we need innovation and new diets and new ways to farm. And yeah, so how can we build the zero hunger generation? What can algae do for it? And algae can and will be an important part of this solution. I believe because they provide for the additional quantity which we need. They are fast growing at scale and not in competition to land-bound crops as they grow in water. And they provide quality food as they are highly nutritious and safe. And we will discuss this later on, I think, in more detail. And they are sustainable, so natural source and plant feedstock. And as sustainability is often used nowadays, I'm just commenting briefly first on macro and then on microalgae on this aspect, as well as the quantity and quality part on a very high level as an introduction. So for the macroalgae, they convert sunlight, CO2 and nutrients from the oceans into organic matter. And like that, they reduce eutrophication, leading to improved water quality. And so they contribute not only to CO2 capture, but also improving our oceans. And this again is leading to better habitats and more marine species and fish in our oceans. So this all is really what we need. And beyond, there is super nutritious feedstock, which can be obviously used for our future foods. They contain lots of good ingredients like plant protein and functional and nutritional actives. We will hear about that, I guess, from Jakob and Alex talking about their implementations. And coming to the microalgae side of it as well, they capture CO2. So 1 ton uses 1.8 ton of CO2. And they also need only minimal resources, also grow in water, so not in competition to land-bound crops. What is pretty cool when we talk about food production here is that they can also grow in not arable areas, so like in deserts, and they grow in these biotech systems, so like PBRs or open ponds, and meaning they can also be grown in buildings or on rooftops, or also be integrated in other new systems like vertical farms. And so this, as most of the population is living in cities, I believe is giving an additional aspect next to the nutritional part. And as many probably know, but they have been amongst the first living species on our planet 3.5 billion years ago. So they contain all building blocks of life. So obviously this makes them an ideal starting point for our foods. And the parts which are particularly interesting, try to summarize here in this slide, which are the bioactive compounds. So they have rare and partially unique ingredients like DHA or EPA, like carotenoids, with antiviral, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant function, and more. So this obviously can provide for quality which we need for our future. Also, they provide for interesting macromolecules and high quality plant protein, which is one of the big topics of today's food. So how can we feed the world with sustainable protein? And lastly, but not least really, is the innovations they bring with absolutely new flavors, new colors, and some new functions. So this shows already that when we talk about which segments of food they could be applied to, it's really all. So they can be in cookies or snacks, they can be in meat and seafood and drinks, but also in condiments and oils. So either as ingredient or really with the biomasses and as main component. Yeah, this all sounds almost too good to be true, I guess. So the question is this also what the market demands? And we all, I think, agree that it does. And what I found very interesting is looking at the statistic from last year. So also the umami taste they bring is now mentioned, and yeah, they are obviously clean label ingredients and are vegan and bring a lot more. So can really help us with all questions around foods. But thinking about first time when I met Fabio, also is a question, why are they not on the shelves everywhere? And I know when we spoke about algae first, he was like, ooh, she's thinking and talking about something green tasting, green of color and funny flavor. And yeah, I think this is particularly with microalgae often the challenge. And what is missing here is really the solutions which integrate this with the functions they bring and the good ingredients with good tastes and with something the consumers learned, which may differ also from country to country and between the continents. And of course, consumer brands, which are really leading, which are really cool, with people are following. And yeah, this is developing, which I think is great to see from my other Jakob here. We'll talk about too. And yeah, I believe this is really what we all need as well. Yeah, and not showing now too many slides, but I'm just hopping on one more to one of the solutions from Allmicroalgae. So we are not on the CPG side, so we are really Europe's largest producer of biomass. And I just show you now 2 slides, and I'm really hopping on the others, so not to take too much time. This is how the production systems look like. So you see the P-bars, fermenters, and open ponds and raceways. Because as you know, they are microscopic, so you produce them in these systems and then you harvest. And what you see there's some species which we produce and they are of high content. And what is really cool is that we have, for example, one hero product developed, which is the white Chlorella vulgaris. And I would perhaps stop this for the discussion, but so we believe that this is really like the new golden standard for plant protein, because it's much more than that. So you have more than 35% of protein inside, but it's, for example, a real vitamin B12 booster. So we have natural vitamin B12 inside, and only 5 grams would provide 110% of the recommended daily intake. So this is what algae can do. They can bring a lot more to our foods than we have today. Yeah, and I could show you lots of other implementations, like just to show you the last picture. So this is some of the applications we did in bakery, in vegan, but also in snacks. And we have lots of function which is coming in. So improved sensory, improved different tastes, improved colors, protein digestibility, health claims you can use. So a variety of properties and benefits you really bring to food applications. Yeah, so I'm happy to discuss more later on, and hope this was giving some sort of an idea what can be done.
Perfect. Thank you very much,
I'm
Alexandra.
sorry.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. This was a very, very useful overview that you presented to us. And I think many different aspects from your presentation are also tackled by the company Algama. And so, Alvin, it would be great to hear a little presentation from your side, what Algama is working on and what you are providing when it comes to algae as the nutrition powerhouse.
Yes, with pleasure. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you, Alexandra, for introducing algae and microalgae particularly, because it's making my job even easier right now. So because what we do at Algama is basically starting from what Alexandra presented. We also witnessed that algae has a great potential, great ingredient with a lot of protein and a lot of minerals, vitamins, a lot of everything, superfood, but still pretty hard to use. So we decided at Algama to become the company that will take this biomass and transform this biomass into an ingredient, because we consider that for the food industry, it's very important to have this transformation level. It's pretty much the same if you consider wheat, for example. You don't do much with the wheat bean or the soybean. You have a transformation process that will enable people to get ingredient from that to get the flour, for example. And as I say a lot, actually, Algama is pretty much the meal of algae. And on the outcomes, what we do, I have an example here. That's a liquid. I don't know if it shows very well, but it's like creamy, like yellowish. And well, this is an algae product that we created that is actually an egg replacer. So thanks to that, you use it into a preparation, and it's replacing the egg perfectly. And well, I know that people tend to say a lot that the ingredient is perfect, but right here you really don't feel difference. You have a product that will be exactly as it should be initially. I have just some examples right here. Maybe our pastry chef will come and give me some more products because I'm in New York for some demos right now. But we have a very good tasting cookies that will be fully vegan with the same taste, with the same texture. That will be extremely similar, and this is how we're enabling people to use algae for the food industry with the very functional ingredients. So that's well, that's the introduction of Algama in a nutshell. We are developing a lot of ingredients and products. We have developed over 200 products right now, and we have a very strong platform with a lot of patents, 25, and we've been working for 8 years to be able to develop all the processes and this formulation capacity for the ingredient and the products. That's it for my intro.
Thank you very much, Alvin. I have one question for you. Where do you see at the moment the biggest challenges when it comes to formulation and the usage of algae? Because I mean, the examples that or the use cases that you show us, they have basically no color anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think there's been some challenges, and the objective at Algama was to fill the gap. So if you take the ingredients, you can even at home cook anything that would have an egg in it, and you won't see the difference. So that's I mean, we believe that it was very important to make it to do that. We're not after consumers directly. We're working with companies, and because large companies have a huge pressure right now on eggs and on many other products, and what they need is something very, very easy to use. They don't want to have any issue. They don't want to buy any machine. They don't want to buy any equipment, anything. So right now I feel like we are filling the gap. It's about having the good supply and the people who buy the products.
Okay, perfect. And thank you very much, Alvin. And yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Alvin. Let's move on to Eugene. So yeah, Algama is a pioneer, really like being around for now. Yes, you said 8 years. Sophie's Bionutrients has been around for quite a while as well, but not that long. But yourself, you are an expert for sure in all things fermentation and also microalgae. Eugene, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in Singapore and what you are doing now in Amsterdam.
So our approach is somewhat similar to Alvin and somewhat different to Alvin as well, in the sense that we're trying to see soy protein today as our competitor. We're trying to emulate or simulate a protein powder flour that has functionally similar to what soy protein can do today in all kinds of food manufacturing applications, and trying to make that out of microalgae. So what we believe is that in the future, even the soy or the plant-based protein we're talking about today, we're trying to promote today to the world, will not be as sustainable as we think. Because why? We're still gonna have a lot of the global warming, deforestation with all these plant-based protein. And quite frankly, looking at the growth of the population, just relying on the plant-based protein is not merely enough. And so that's why we think, just like Alexandra presented, we believe microalgae is the solution. And how can we make that solution to be better for the world to adapt? Well, one thing you can do is to make it what they used to feel, what they used to use, what they used to do. And that means that you have to make your protein flour functionally, applicationally, even price, even flavor, even smell. I saw one of the questions or comments in the chat box about the smell. With the fermentation technology, we can make microalgae to be capable of doing all that. Not only we can make the color light, we can also tone down the flavor quite easily. And on top of that, we can make it priced competitively, so affordable in the future that I can make a very bold statement that in the future, the price of microalgae protein can possibly be even lower than the soy protein someday. Now, a lot of folks in the audience may challenge me for that. Welcome. But, look at the pricing index of the soy in the last 20 decades or even 30 decades. It's slowly but surely creeping up. Because why? We have the global warming going on. We have the increasing population and increasing demands from countries like China and other developing countries. And that's why I think soy price and a lot of other plant-based protein pricing will go up like this, where at the same time, technologies from microalgae developed by ours and Alvin's will help the pricing of microalgae go down like this. And when the two line crossed, hallelujah, microalgae will replace soy and become the main staple of the world. So that is my 2 cents of the future of the microalgae protein.
Thank you. It's already a lively discussion just at this very beginning. So Alexandra, do you want to add something? Am I right?
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you. So I totally agree, but would also like to just add from our expertise, as we are working with many partners from the industry. There is already now this demand, and of course you always discuss finally about the price, but more and more really it is important for the companies what they really integrate in their products, so in their foods, and also how it's produced, and also what kind of treatments you do, so really to stay most natural and what you can bring, because finally we talk about also let's say the expectation that there will be a true cost accounting coming as well, and this will also have a big influence. So everybody is looking at these aspects as well, and yes, they want lower prices, but I personally believe that it's not the question to go as low as possible, but to reach a price point or a cost point which is which is competitive, but still providing a lot of other advantages. There will be a lot more coming in addition, I guess, but totally agree.
So coming from microalgae, we are now going to the macroalgae sector. And this time, Jakob, I'm not forgetting you. Jakob, maybe you can present us what you are doing at Better Fish and Nordic Ocean Fruit.
Yes, first of all, thanks for having me here. It looks like a really exciting round and discussion. So basically, what our passion is, the seaweed, we call it. We don't call it macro, we call it seaweed. So we are in love with plants that are cultivated in the ocean, and that's essential to our mission, that they are cultivated in the ocean. They don't need any fresh water, obviously. They grow in the salt water. They have multiple positive impacts on the ocean when they are cultivated there. They can increase biodiversity, counter acidification, improve water quality. So really be a positive regenerative force instead of just being sustainable. We always say the oceans are too fucked up right now that we can be sustainable, but we have to have a positive impact because they're so broken already. And we have the chance to have that with cultivating seaweed. And another great aspect of seaweed cultivation is that coastal communities, people who live off fishing, that's more than 700 million people worldwide who have their livelihood in fishing. They depend right now on fishing, and they are destroying the oceans, but they also have the infrastructure and the know-how to cultivate seaweed instead. And we cannot forget these people, and the fish stick based on soy doesn't help them either. So we have to somehow think of livelihoods and people as well. We take them into the equation, and we try to make more people eat seaweed so that then more people can cultivate seaweed, and more fishermen and fisherwomen can transition towards seaweed farming. And we basically have two brands. We have organic ocean fruit, it's called, our ocean fruit brand. We do like organic products like seaweed salads and so on, where people actually eat seaweed and they're going there to eat seaweed. And that's where we started also when we built our whole supply chain. We're working directly with seaweed farmers here in Europe. It's a very young industry here. Obviously, there's an older industry in East Asia, but here it's a pretty new game, and we started building the supply chain for our organic brand. And then we have our brand Better Fish, where we basically mimic mainstream fish products. We started with tuna. We have our tuna sandwiches in shops right now in Germany and Austria. And they're basically just like any ready-to-eat tuna sandwich, but they are based on our vegan tuna, and the vegan tuna is based on seaweed and other plant-based ingredients. And we also have a vegan tuna pizza in the shops, actually pretty new, just since 1 week it's in stores. And our tuna looks and tastes and works just like tuna. We're producing at pretty large scale industrially, our sandwiches and our pizzas. And we were very happy to see how consumers love it. And if you share our sandwiches with someone, they will not know if it's real tuna or not. And I think our seaweed mixes and our seaweed know-how play a large role in making this possible. And our main goal is always to create delicious food that reaches the mainstream and that makes people fall in love with seaweed. That's what we do.
Jakob, this is really an awesome and great mission, I must say. Thanks for sharing it to us. One question to you, since you're cultivating the algae or the seaweed in coastal areas, are you facing the same challenges that we see also in the fish segment with microplastic and mercury?
I mean, in every segment of plant cultivation, fish cultivation, agriculture, you will have to watch pollutants. And we do that as well. Yeah, we make sure that we grow our crops in very clean waters and in safe areas, and we also monitor the quality and the compounds. And so far, we've never had any problems with pollutants in our crops.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jacob. Now on to Alex. And we're staying with seaweed and its application as a source of protein, but also like a real game changer in terms of sustainability of climate change. And that's what Alexandra has been working on for quite a while and now is executing with Genesee. Can you tell us more about it, please, Alex?
Hi. So I first thank all the panelists so far, since the introduction was really great, both on micro and macroalgae. So I started working in this area like in 2005. So we were looking for substitutes for soy protein. And one of the first ideas was actually to look into the microalgae, since they grow so fast, but very rapidly, I at least realized that the real future for the commodities coming from algae will be from the sea. So we switched to macroalgae, and since then been around in different ways of doing this. And we learned two numbers, which we also teach in our School of Environmental Studies in Tel Aviv University, is that to make 1 kilogram of soy protein, you need 25 square meters of land and 4,000 liters of water just for the production. And if you go and grow macroalgae in the sea, you just don't need this. So, and this is a huge change in the future if we look on deforestation and all other environmental issues. And so what we did both at the university in the lab, and now we execute this at Genesee, is to use offshore and also far offshore grown macroalgae as a feedstock for the production of ingredients for the food industry. So we started with the protein and we really believe that the future of the plant protein is in the sea, but we also talk about other products such as starch. So we talk about fibers, we talk about different types of colloids and lipids and so forth. So eventually we take the biomass of the macroalgal biomass and fractionate it into multiple ingredients. So now we have 7 ingredients, which eventually we can process and recover about 92–94% of the biomass as ingredients which could be used for the food industry. Now, there are obvious questions about taste and colors and so forth. So eventually the ingredients are coming in the color, taste, and as the food industry is used to them. So the protein should be white with no color, no taste, and so forth. Same about fibers, same about lipids. So there are no other options of doing this. And so how to achieve it? It's a lot of process and design. So at least in Genesee process, what we do, we don't use any chemicals, and also all our processes are non-thermal. So the idea is actually how you develop smart, innovative new processes to take the green or red smelly biomass and convert it into the appeal into the food industry ingredients. So that's what we're doing so far.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And it's interesting that one of the first questions that usually comes up is about color or smell and so on, things that people associate with algae. But of course, there's so much more to it, and this is not the main challenge. Yeah, you have told me about your about what you call the Genesee vision. Can you wrap this up for the audience and for everybody here? What the Genesee vision is when it comes to seaweed and its application?
So the vision is very simple. We want to provide ingredients for the food industry and reduce deforestation this way. Since today, almost all ingredients for the food industry coming from plants are coming from the account of the lands which once were forests or savannas or whatever it will be. And what we see is that transitioning of the biomass production to the sea eventually not only enriches the seas, as Alexandra mentions, but it also allows to reduce the deforestation and land conversion, which are the major challenges for the coming years. That's very clear.
Thanks. Yeah, it sounds easy, but of course it's hard if you think of a cultivation at that scale. How would we get there? I think this applies to microalgae as well. How can you scale this on land in tanks or offshore?
Well, today the global production of seaweed is around 30 million ton wet weight, which is not that small if we look into this. And most of this biomass is used as colloids, meaning carrageenan and agarose, all the ingredients going for the food industry. And if you ask those companies what they do with the rest, most cases they just throw it away. So now you can think about the amounts of the biomass which are going back to the sea. And we think that there are two ways to solve these issues. Is one, again, is the smart processing, how you eventually take the biomass and extract most of ingredients out of it. And the second one is automation for the production, because today our regular agricultural industries are fully automated, and most cases seaweed farming is manual, and there is a huge place for the innovation and transition in these areas.
And I mean, if I can add, you already mentioned it, but one large argument is that we have a zero input crop here. So in most coastal areas, there's too many nutrients in the water already. So we don't need any fertilizer, we don't need any fresh water, and we can really grow a lot of different, really exciting plants. We are often here talking about biomass and large quantities, but we really also see a lot of diversity when it comes to flavors, textures. We're talking about many different plants. We know really little about this space of plants. So there's like a whole kingdom of plants that we can still explore and cultivate.
Yeah, so that's very true, because once we talk with the customers and people around about seaweed, they look most of them look about all algae as one segment. So they have like soy and chickpea and then the algae. So some people start to differentiate between microalgae and macroalgae. Then we come and say that only in macroalgae there are like thousands of species, and if you take each one of them, that's actually the proteins which, or in case of proteins, be completely different. So eventually we'll talk about a huge number of categories of products, because proteins from red algae are not the proteins from green algae. And green algae, if you take different species, the proteins will be completely different, and their functionality is what you can extract. So we're talking about a broad portfolio of products which could be produced for the food industries and other industries which use proteins or other commodities in this case.
It's amazing that there could be thousands, 10,000s, or even I don't know, about 1 million of different species, if I'm not mistaken. So, and there are only in microalgae, there are only like two main types that are being used, and it's for seaweed, it's a similar number. Why is that? And how could one leverage this kingdom in a more effective way?
So traditionally, macroalgae are used in the large scale for the food industry for carrageenan and agarose, and they were harvested naturally in the areas where these were available. So it's evolution-wise, it turned out to be few species commercially used. So we're talking about maybe 7 to 11 species used or cultivated today. All other species, you need a technique, so you need to understand the life cycle of the species and then which technology fits them. Some can be free floating, like green algae we're growing. Some of them need to be attached to different types of substrates, and you need to develop those substrates. So each of those plants is a separate story. Like you talk about soy and chickpea, yes, so they're not the same. And if you look about all agriculture today, there are very few crops which we're actually growing. So the same story with the macroalgae. We have a huge diversity of species out there, but actually used are very few.
Jacob, I think Nordic Ocean fruit and betta-fish, you're just using also two types that are common, right?
No, we're looking actually in the R&D that we do is looking at any seaweed that we can get our hands on. Mostly, of course, we want to focus on plants that we can cultivate already. And as Alex says, that's not many right now. We are working with a variety of plants. Some of them might also be wild harvested right now and hopefully going into cultivation soon. But yeah, you can compare it. Yeah, if you would imagine we could only cultivate 3 types of grain right now in Europe. It's like Stone Age, we're pretty much still in Stone Age in this sense, although 70% or more of our planet are covered in oceans and we know nothing about these plants. So there's so much space for innovation and so much space to conquer new flavors, new textures, apart from the whole protein game. Right now, it's not for us, it's not so much about protein, it's more about flavors and textures and these kind of things.
In Genesee, what we did eventually, our process now is species agnostic. So we think that once we have the biorefinery process, which will extract ingredients from different seaweeds, we can eventually deploy them from tropical areas to the cold waters in the north. And that's what we are focusing these days, because eventually for each location globally, it is in tropical areas or in the north areas, there will be definitely different species. So and that's different types of aquaculture which is happening there. So we are feeling these needs for the technologies of processing which are species agnostic at this point.
Alex, you were talking about the automatization and that this is something where we are also still in the Stone Age. My question to the whole audience, or not to the whole audience, to all you panelists is, if we are talking about microalgae, and in the past there was always a discussion when you were talking about vertical farming that the microalgae topic is also the holy grail of resource allocation. Where do you think are we when it comes to this? Is it something that is already real, or are there big challenges like the harvesting and the level of automatization that doesn't make it so profitable at the moment?
Shall I start? Arvin and Eugene are unmuted still. So no, I think the technologies are actually there, and of course you can, and we will see further improvements there. But I think the technologies are not the real bottleneck anymore, and we see a lot of approaches already where it's combined. So like, as you said, like also in these vertical farms, but also in other production areas. But still you need, then it depends on what you produce for. So whether you produce the bioactives or whether you want to produce protein or some other ingredients or the whole foods in the end. And you look at your price point, and then it is the question which scale you need, obviously, right? So are you producing in vertical systems in cities for direct selling to the consumer around the corner, and who will probably later on produce himself in his apartment or somewhere, or are you really producing at industrial scale for real industrial food production? I think this is the difference, and for this you need different technical approaches and setups, but it is actually there. And can be done. So the question is really now to further exploit this wealth of innovation, as Jakob and Alex told about macroalgae. I think for microalgae it's almost more, if not the same, because so many more species to exploit, and the 2 species which are food approved as food, and then we have some novel food approvals for some ingredients. But there's a lot more to discover in future, and this will bring a lot more potential also, which we can all use for the developments.
Thank you very much, Alexandra.
Maybe I can add up something right here is that I really agree that while the technology is right there if you want to produce in pretty massive scale today, it's and we've seen a lot of automation. At Algama, we have to see how people are producing in the algae because they are our supplier. We buy the biomass, and it's out there. But if you want to have it, you need to also have the market on the other side, the people that will be demanding and using the algae, and the biomass, and that's very the reason why we decided to offer possibilities of easy use of algae at Algama, and I'll take also this chance to answer some of the questions because I see that there's some questions that I can't answer the question at the same time and listen to the interesting panelists. If you want us to answer the questions, you have to have an interesting people because it's too hard otherwise. But yeah, when we talk about the price parity, I saw an interesting question about that price parity and isolate. At Algama, for example, we don't sell actually isolate. We sell an egg alternative. So the price parity is not going to be compared with the price of, I don't know, soy protein, but with the price of an egg. And when it comes to that, I can very proudly say that at Algama, we're already at the price of an egg. So we are at price parity because we are using a very highly functional ingredients. So that's how we manage to reach interested consumers, customers that will be using the whole thing. And also the first question was pretty funny for me because can we use that in meat products? Well, actually, we discovered that we can, thanks to our customers, because we never knew before how to make a plant-based meat product, meat analog, something like that. And people told us, yeah, we could use eggs for that. But when we came with the functionality, they said, well, the functionality of egg is very interesting for that. And right now we have a lot of people using it to make actually plant-based burgers. So that's I think if we need to open the whole thing is a lot about how we use it, how we unlock the actual functionality, the actual use of the algae more than the production, because technically we're there.
Thank you very much, Alvin. For the audience, because there seems to be still some confusion, there is a button right next to the chat button, which is called Q&A. You can use this one to ask your questions, and then we can better track it, because there are still some questions in the chat room. The chat room you can use for networking. So if you have a topic or if you want to present yourself, then you can, or your company, you can post it in the chat area, the Q&A area for questions. And we are now using some of your questions answers.
I would like to add something about the whole automation topic. That's something people often raise, and I think there's a big misunderstanding here. The whole food industry, there's many products which are not automated. It's not like everything is being harvested by robots right now. And seaweed is just one of many products which involve a lot of work and labor right now. But just that's just comparable to, I don't know, strawberries or a weird crop we eat in Germany called asparagus, and all these things. They take a lot of work, and that doesn't mean that nobody can eat fruits or vegetables right now. And in that case, right now, the stage that we're at, we can see that seaweeds and these plants right now, we're at a stage of basically ocean vegetables, if you want to say so. And they take a comparable amount of work like any other vegetable, but we are not at the soy or pea or fava bean level when it comes to harvesting and amounts. But we have no problem in buying large amounts of seaweed right now, and we get them at a price that we are still able to put them in a lot of our products. And right now there's a lot of work involved, and everything is done by hand, or a lot of things are done by hand. But that doesn't hold us back. And only if we start now already, if we already use it, will it be better, then it will improve for the future, and it will be more automation there.
And if I may add, even so, I'm not from the, I mean, I'm just a little bit in the macroalgae world, yeah, but there are really so different products and possibilities. There's one very cool macroalgae I know, which I think is called pinifidata something, a second name I forgot, which tastes like truffles. And it's just living along the coastline, and you have to harvest it really like with a little scissor. So this is not to be automated, but obviously then the price is also very different to when you talk about different products. So we are having here a very broad topic actually with algae for food, and then it's macro and micro and all the applications. And I think so therefore we have often not one answer to a question, but there may be different answers because we talk about different applications. And so we're coming back then to the microalgae and for example, all microalgae. So we do industrial production for industrial clients. And of course, there is a lot of automation. We have a huge plant and we produce huge volumes, obviously. And this is then different to if I would, sell pinifidata to somebody. But still also, I totally agree with Jakob. Also, we take a lot of care of the gentle production methods to have good ingredients and to have good products. And so it's not 100% automation, but we are really working on it. Yeah, 50 people are busy, but still, you can have high volumes and have a certain degree of automation, of course. Yeah.
Alex, you wanted to add something, I think, to the discussion here.
Yes, so the issue is that we screen now and we look for collaborations also for cultivation. And obviously there are companies which grow everything by hand, starting from Tanzania to different other areas. But there are quite a few startups which now work on complete automation and automatization. So I think it's important to differentiate between these two, because automation is to build a completely autonomic system that you have one person which does everything, yes, and then the robots are doing all the work. And so for soy, sometimes it actually does work. Automatization means that you actually have machines which help people to do their work, and you just increase the scale of the production. And so their automation, I think we're not there yet with the demand, but automatization is something which should be achieved really, really fast if we want, at least in our side, the seaweed industry to beat the price levels which are affordable for the food industry as ingredients, not as the vegetables. Because if we talk about strawberries, so strawberry, at least in Israel today, probably is the most expensive product in the supermarkets. And if we talk about tofu, yeah, and in our case, if we want to compare to tofu, it's probably about the cheapest ones. So, and there is this gap which needs to bridge, and automatization is one of the ways to do it. And at least we don't see any practical big challenges in these areas, because that's most of these problems have been solved for most of other types of agriculture.
Yeah, often you can use also techniques and infrastructure from other industries, and then quickly, like from aquaculture, fish cultivation or other fields, and then apply them for seaweed cultivation potentially.
So at least we have here a few fish farms. We're not, the seaweed, the fish superpower, but we have a couple of companies which have almost completely automation systems with like 2 people operating the fish farms with the underwater robots watching under them and so forth. So this type of things are developed, but not for seaweeds yet.
So thank you very much, Alex. So we are starting now with the questions from the Q&A section. So the first question comes from Joey Price. How useful is bioengineering of algae strains as a tool in your product development and manufacture? Are there too many regulatory hurdles there?
So I'm a professor of bioengineering, so I can reply maybe in this regard here.
Go for it.
Yeah. So in macroalgae, we do work, and we have partners who work on bioengineering of strains, but at least today with the regulation part of this, there is no way any type of engineered strains are going to be introduced in the sea, at least in the parts of the world we are familiar with. So, and to introduce the engineered strains in the lab, you need to make sure that nothing leaks to the environment. So that's the major concern between even transfer of species from country to country. But if you engineer something in the lab, which there is a concern of spores to leak to the environment, there is a big issue on this. So There are ways to do this, but not for outside deployment. That's what we know, at least in terms of the macroalgae. In the microalgae world, it's I guess it's easier situation there because there are no major leakages, but microalgae people reply this.
Thank you. Maybe anything else on regulatory issues in general? That's why we have to focus on a few species anyway, or how big of a problem is that? That is sometimes a problem with innovations in the plant-based alternative protein space.
So in regulation is country-based, and in case of the marine environment, there's a particular concern because there is no borders and things are just flow around very, very fast, and it's much more difficult to control and to regulate anything related to the marine environment. Engineered species of bacteria are used always. There are large-scale production of engineered bacteria for different types of products, but there is a regulation how to take care of the reactors. In the case of algae, and especially if we talk about very large-scale production, there is a need to monitor what gets out of those facilities, and to monitor the spore leakage is an issue. So it's something to look around.
And if you can have a quick side chat here on the fish alternatives and the meat alternatives. That would be quite interesting to hear what do we have to expect there as a main application, because there's so much potential for that. Is it like a natural approach from Algae, and also from Eugene? I think first generation of your flour will be used for dairy alternatives, for example, but you are also approaching the meat alternatives category, right?
Yeah, I started the project because I want to make a perfect seafood replacement, seafood alternative. And turned out I found this is a much, much bigger opportunity, just like Alexandra mentioned. This could be more than just seafood alternative. And quite frankly, when you look at the plant-based protein, alternative protein take-up, it's happening mostly in the Western market. And also asking ourselves, how much seafood does the Western market really consume? The bulk of the seafood really is consumed in the third world market or in Asia. And it's hard to convince those people to adapt the plant-based protein like we do here in Europe or there in North America. And so that's why I switched gear. And also on top of that, I found out, microalgae not only can do a lot of things. And if we together work with the cell-based technology, microalgae can be a perfect growth medium, growth factor, even the scaffolding for the future cultured seafood. Think about it. Without microalgae protein, without microalgae, the cultured seafood will be just nothing. Because why? In its lifetime, that cultured seafood never consumed any algae without us. In its lifetime, it's never swim in the ocean, so it doesn't have the fishy smell without us. With all the microalgae ingredients that we can provide from all the companies that's in the panel right here, or even the macroalgae companies, we can provide these cultured seafood a wonderful serum, wonderful soup that they need to make that perfect seafood replacement. And what can be better than that? And so that's why I think what we really should work on is the fundamental ingredient and fundamental technology to make the future more adaptable for all the consumer markets.
Thanks.
Well, I have to say that I do agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do agree a lot on the fact that we really need to invest on the technology, on what we do, on what's very upstream, because that's why it's going to bring a lot of innovation, and we really like to see that when you think about seafood products in particular, well, indeed, it's well, the most obvious products is probably from the sea. So it's especially when it can bring everything, like the protein, the fatty acids, the color, the texture. I mean, you can bring pretty much everything from these organisms. So it makes perfect sense. And we already created products in which we don't need to use any aroma to mimic exactly the taste of actual seafood products. So that was the last thing that algae can bring in a very strong way. On meat alternative, it can bring also a lot of things. I don't think that it's very obvious to it's less obvious than seafood, because, well, you see what I said about seafood is quite organic, but when you consider meat from algae can be a bit challenging. But a lot of things inside the algae will be very interesting to create meat, because some of the components of meat won't be found in enough quantities in any plants, and when algae can produce this component, and I'm not going to be more specific than that right now, but when you can produce this very specific component that will bring interesting taste, color to the meat, well, you have something that can help the meat alternative industry as well.
Exciting to see what's in store and what's coming, also with the new company you're working on, for which you got a significant public grant from the European Commission. So yeah, we're all excited to see what's coming there.
It's coming in 2022.
2022.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah, we have another question from the audience, from Florin. She asked if somebody in the panel can provide support for new companies that want to become algae producer, or the question, is there any program to help to start a business in this area?
Alexandra?
Yeah, so it sounds like you stand at the very beginning, so you can, of course, always come with your questions to the European Biomass Association and ask. And there are people like me supporting also startups. And otherwise, I could also probably, depending on your segment, what duplication you're looking for, recommend who you could talk to. And I guess people like Albrecht and others would be there too, I assume.
One addition here, it's I think it's very important to go out there and meet with people who really know how to grow algae, and because we are seeing a lot of people that are trying to come here and feels like it's very easy, and our chief scientific officer can tell you about it, Jean-Paul Cadore. Hey, Jean-Paul, I know you're here. Yeah, that's a lot of people broke their legs when they try to do this type of things, and I think it's too bad, because it's also hurting the industry, because sometimes they're very good at fundraising and getting a lot of people around, but try to get the knowledge and try to learn what has been done for decades before you go there. And a lot of specialists, indeed, the EABA has a lot of people right there, it's very important that you do that, because it's actually more complicated than it seems.
Yeah,
but it's great. So don't discourage here, people. So it's fantastic having new players coming in and new people being interested in supporting this area. So yes, of course, come and talk with us, and I think we'll help you with the network.
Yes, and I'm sorry if I can sound
no, it's fine.
This is what I do all the time.
Right.
I'm discouraging people, because I'm like, no. if you're not able to do it, just don't do it.
Yeah,
you better be ready for something very hard.
Complicated, but worth
it's
it.
excellent.
Jacob, you were saying?
Yeah, so if she was talking about seaweed, then I have to kind of agree here that okay, if you are already in the aquaculture space, if you're already, I don't know, farming salmon, or if you're already farming shellfish, or if you're a fisherman or woman, then you will have a good chance to transition and maybe first develop as a side stream. And there's lots of programs and lots of companies that will help you and that will supply you, depending, of course, where you are in the world. But I think if you come from some city and you think this is a great idea, then you should do your homework and get in touch with this medium and with the infrastructure and so on.
Yeah, someone just said in the chat that they are setting up a seaweed farm in Scotland. So maybe that's something for Florin, someone to reach out to connect Yeah.
But perhaps, as I mentioned, EABA, perhaps I may add. So our association is fostering really the exchange between all players, all stakeholders, and connecting, educating, and helping with information. So I'm pretty sure, you know, everybody listening here now sees how much potential there is and how interesting the topic is. Check our website and apply for membership, because I think this is really super useful when you want to get active in the field.
Yeah, so let's take another question.
Also, if you want to get into the field and you want to get active and you love seaweed and everything, you know, you don't have to be a seaweed farmer. We have a lot of jobs right now. We are looking for all kinds of talents. If you love seaweed, doesn't mean you have to build a seaweed farm. You can also check out our job board and apply for anything from accountants to, yeah, we have something for everyone.
Algae is also hiring. I think so is Eugene, and probably Alex will be doing the same thing soon. So yeah, it's a wide open market. It should be getting more interesting every day. Yeah, someone was asking about novel foods instead of just, you know, that's for the plant-based and the whole alternative protein space, a thing that we're just mimicking, for example, fish products or seafood in general. Is there anything on the horizon that's different, that's we cannot imagine today? What do you think? What will the landscape look like in terms of algae-based products? Maybe starting with Algae, since you are working on a different, quite a diverse range of topics.
Actually, there are so many things I can't even talk about, but I think it's one thing that we're trying to do right now that is very important is working with as many companies as we can, because there's so much you can do with one company, but the collaboration helps generating a lot of ideas. So ideas and possibilities to launch new products, because, well, I can tell you we have at Algae 100 products. We cannot launch everything. We have a lot of ideas of ingredients that we're working on with very large companies, and that's also the reason why I can't say too much, because of course there's a lot of confidentiality there. But it's really about unlocking the possibilities you have into algae. We did mention everything all around this panel that we can do a lot, and we need to definitely, I'll come back to that all the time, making sure that what we create actually find a customer and a consumer, and that would be the big deal, more than ideas and more than anything else, because if you want to make that work, it has to be well sustainable. I mean, in a way where it's also profitable.
Sure thing. I mean, you say big corporations, but one thing that Algae also does, which is quite interesting, that you have a couple of spin-off startups now, testing and exploring and growing on the market. So that's also a way of, like, you know, getting into different industries, different sectors.
Yeah, absolutely. Right there, we partner with some companies and great entrepreneurs that are launching new products from the technologies that we developed. And you mentioned before the seafood reboot is one of the big one that received for which we received 2 million for the European Commission, and well, more announcement very soon. A great team growing right there, and a great possibility for us to see this new project growing and remaining focused on what we do on the ingredient part. So that's that's definitely an interesting model, and I'll be happy to share what we do, because I think if anyone else wants to do a similar model, that's something that I can encourage. It's also not easy. There's a lot of things that you should avoid, but good way to push more product to the market and educate the consumers and the customers.
Thank you very much, Alvin. There are two questions to Jakob. The first one is, are you just working for the food sector, or do you have also material or seaweed for other materials? This is the first one. And the second one is seaweed harvesting sustainable, or is there a way in the future to make it more sustainable?
Yeah. So first of all, as we already, maybe I mentioned, we have several brands. We actually take both routes. So we have Ocean Fruit, that is all about seaweed in the first place, and here we are developing whole new products which don't mimic fish or something, but make seaweed ingredients. And then we have Better Fish, where we mimic seafood and fish using seaweed. But we see ourselves as a seaweed company, and we're going in all kinds of fields. But of course, you can only do so much with a growing team. But right now, food is really our focus. As we mentioned, some seaweed species are still quite expensive, so you have to find ways to make it work in the large scale food industry, and we managed to do that with our products, even reaching parity with a normal tuna sandwich in our sandwich. But right now the focus is definitely the food sector. And we also said already, there are so many different species depending on what you do and how you harvest and where you get them from. Obviously, if you do really brutal wild harvesting somewhere, you will harm the environment. If you cultivate seaweed in the ocean, you have a positive impact in most cases. Of course, even there, depending on how you would do it, there's always a way to harm the environment. But I see that seaweed cultivation is one of the few things that humans can do that get a positive impact the more that you do it. So the more we cultivate seaweed in the ocean, the better the impact can be on the oceans. It's a regenerative impact. But if you go and harvest some coral reef, then obviously that wouldn't be great.
Yeah. There's always a right way of doing it. Obviously, wrong ways.
Yes. It's a huge opportunity to have a regenerative positive impact. Let's put it this way, and that's the great opportunity here.
And someone was asking about your products, but I think this can go for all the applications we've heard about. You're combining other plant-based ingredients, and for example, seaweed protein. What's the mix, and why is what needed, as much as you can reveal?
Yeah, of course. We mix different species. We focus on European species right now. We are one of the first companies who are really buying these plants at scale and enabling seaweed farms to grow and innovate. We are getting our plants directly from the farms, building supply chain, processing, and quality of these products. And we mix seaweed with other plant ingredients depending on the products. You know, some talking about our tuna, we mix it with other fibers and plant proteins to get the texture and the flavor profile of tuna. It just tastes like tuna. It wouldn't be possible without the seaweed, but it also, I think, right now wouldn't be possible only with seaweed. And in other products, we have also the whole plants in our Ocean Fruit brand and our organic brand. We basically have salads and stuff like this. So classic delicatessen products, but the new thing is that we use European seaweeds for this that weren't cultivated or used in the industry so far.
Thanks. Interesting. Yeah, there's so many questions and such a lively, really like discussion and kind of connecting people here on the chat. One more thing that's probably for Alex is about the nitrogen that is needed to get to the seaweed protein or to algae protein. If someone else wants to talk about microalgae here, anything on that can be, let's answer this in a more or less simple way.
Yeah, obviously we need nitrogen for seaweeds to grow, and one of the first things we did some few years ago was to create a global map of locations where there is both nutrient natural upwelling. Upwelling means that there are some nutrients coming from the bottom of the ocean to the surface, and also areas which are eutrophicated. So you have the washout of fertilizers from the agriculture to the sea. So we created the map, global maps, is available online, and it enables to plan the future large-scale seaweed farming. Also, it's important to remember that in the sea there are always there are currents, meaning that any type of nutrient you put inside will immediately be dispersed somewhere else. And they need to position the farm in the area where the currents come with the nutrient supply. And what seaweeds are doing very effectively, they accumulate the nitrogen. So, and we have these experiments done offshore that you have a boost of nitrogen coming, they absorb the nitrogen, and then eventually there is no nitrogen coming else, and they continue growing. So all these things are needed, and that's what we call the precision aquaculture. And we have people in the team working on this, and of the precision seaweed aquaculture.
It's basically a huge opportunity to close the cycle. You know, a large amount of the phosphates and nitrates that we put into our agricultural systems end up in the ocean, and it's a huge waste of resources. It has very bad impact on our ecosystems in the ocean. And by harvesting seaweed, cultivating seaweed, we have the possibility to close this cycle and to win back nutrients that we really can't afford to lose. Right now, we are at really, really high prices when it comes to fertilizers. And that's another aspect that makes seaweed farming more efficient, that we don't need these expensive fertilizers.
Yeah, there's a good question regarding this. Is there already a life cycle assessment on algae versus other sources of protein, especially when it comes to other alternative protein sources?
There is, I mean, so there are work published on different types of cultivation technologies and processing technologies. So it's really depends on how you handle the biomass and where you grow the biomass, and how the biomass is harvested, transported, processed, and so forth. So in terms of comparison to crops, there were studies done in terms of comparison to fermented things like fermented proteins produced today. There were no studies, since most of these companies, as far as we know, don't have published results, or they don't publish the data about the yields of the fermentation. On algae, on the other source, there is plenty of publications, so you can get the data. And also in the agriculture, there is a lot of data on all the new types of currently emerging protein sources. There are very few data available about the environmental efficiency, so I haven't seen at least any life cycle analysis done.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Let's talk about the sustainability aspect one more time, because many people are asking about, can you really like compare this to soy or replace soy protein? The case is clear for you, Alex, on an offshore application or offshore cultivation. But I think for you, Eugene, as well, like you claim that your land use will be minimal compared to any other source of, or most other sources of protein, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the land use in our technology with the fermentation technology overall, not just to us, is going to be very minimal. And so that's one of the benefits. And on top of that, we don't even need to use the ocean. So you don't have to worry about the contamination coming from the ocean or the global warming up the ocean water. You know, you don't have to carry any of that. And quite frankly, you know, this is the crazy stuff, very wild, very crazy stuff. But then again, think about it. It might happen. It may happen is that when Elon Musk want to shoot people over to Mars, we can potentially use our technology and set up a system on Mars, identical to the one that we're going to set up here in Europe, and produce protein out of microalgae using the microalgae on Mars. Because why? When there is water, there's going to be microalgae. And we can use the microalgae on that planet to grow for the foods for the new settlers on that new planet. Now, this may be too extreme for a lot of folks, but I'm just trying to point out the fact that, you know, you don't really have to be affected by the global warming, the weather, or whatsoever. And you don't need a lot of space footprint. And you can use a lot of fermentation technology. And the fermentation technology we're talking about is not just the microbial fermentation. We're talking about also the cell-based meat and seafood technology. They're, in a sense, in my personal opinion, a different type of fermentation technology as well. So bioprocessing, what I like to use is the term bioprocessing, really is the future of the food production in any sense. That's just my 2 cents.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess we could talk about that alone for a whole session. And So there's
Yeah, I can talk about it for
I know.
7 days. Don't get me started, but that's another topic for sure. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, so many ways of like looking at fermentation, and Alex was pointing to the low efficiency in some applications or some parts of this realm, but you are emphasizing how efficient and it can actually be, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, there's an additional question about how can government support the sector? So this is also a good question. What is to create the ideal scenario? How should the support from governments should look like?
Well, I've heard from Algae, they expect in 2 million. That's already a good start, but it's not enough. So maybe tell us.
Give us more money.
What else do we need?
Well, we did receive more. I mean, we had more from the European Commission, and they are being very helpful when it comes to making sure that we have positive solution for the future of food, and I think that this is a concern that is very well present right now. It's something that was a bit different. I can tell you when we started, it was much harder to get them to understand what we were doing, but today they want to support that. So I think we are in a good position. What we do today, I think, is positive, but it's also a very good timing. And people try to do a lot of things around algae for a lot of time, and maybe the timing was not the best. And well, right now there's a better momentum, and that's also a reason why I really do believe, and I insist we need to make the best of it, because it's I don't think there's ever been another time where we had so many opportunities in terms of technologies, in terms of on the inputs on the market that is switching very quickly right now towards new products, and real you see the urgency for the planet. So this is now, and I think people, governments, and public institutions, they got it. It's so keep the money coming, and I think that it's good that it's a good movement right now.
Alex, Jacobus is also true for Seaweed.
Well, so we've been involved a while with the government here, and I think that money is one of the issues, but it's not the most critical one. At least in the offshore areas in Israel, there is a very strict regulation about what can be done and where. And there are issues involved, and we actually about 3 years ago published a joint report with the several ministries here about the future of exclusive economic zone, which is actually divided by multiple users, because we have energy companies and power transport and different types of military activities involved and so forth. So that's actually not that easy to find areas, at least in our case, with the large areas for seaweed cultivation, which will be actually planned long-term for this. So what we were able to do, and that's part of a really great work done within several ministries and marine projection and planning, was to draw the areas which will be allocated for research and development, areas which are allocated for pilot scale production and for large scale production of fish and algae and so forth. So originally they were thinking about on the fish. And so we then came up with the algae, and all of a sudden, from very small areas and polygons in the seeds became very large, because there is a need for large areas. And this is one approach of the long-term planning. Another one is the infrastructure, since there is no actually build in many cases. So some countries have an existing infrastructure for this. Some countries just have a huge coastal lines and they don't have infrastructure, or the available infrastructure is not available for people who want to get into this business. So there is also an issue that if you have a port, all these people in the seaport and the docks, they have, all the lines are busy. So if you want to have the ship to get out to the sea, to bring the biomass, to do the spray processing and so forth, this requires definite regulation and administration. So we have actually now in the Israel Ministry of the Agriculture a person dedicated to the micro and macroalgae long-term planning. So I think that's a really big push in this area. So they came up with annual reports and see how these activities are done. So that's at least from our side here.
Great. Thank you very much, Alex. There's another question to you, Alex, and also to you, Jakob. What R&D pipeline suggestion would you give to researchers that intend to turn low protein and high polysaccharide content to macroalgae into valuable products to food sector?
I didn't really understand the question.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alex, did you get it? I don't know.
No. So the idea is how to use the low protein, high polysaccharide.
Yeah, exactly. Content
So
from macroalgae into viable products.
So need to see what are the polysaccharides. Yes, I guess these are some sort of Kappa ficus people are growing in the large scale today. So Kappa ficus has, I don't know, like 5, 6, 8% of protein. So this is not really the species could be used for protein production and even large scale, but it has many other ingredients. So in each of the species, it's important to understand that each of the species has their own ingredients. So there is a need to separate them and see what's out there and build your model, both for functionality, economic models, and so forth. But not all species are fit to protein production, for example.
Yeah, there's a lot of generalization with like seaweed grow so fast, seaweeds are so full of proteins and this and that. That's definitely not the case for every seaweed, and I don't see currently an application for protein extraction.
Michael.
Since we heard about even flying to Mars and cultivating or building infrastructure there, someone was asking if what happens if you really take this to a high level where you replace, or where you substitute protein production on a scale that can feed the future population of the world. Would this be devastating to the oceans? Would this come to a level where you have actually a similar effects that you have in like now on land? Jacob,
well,
laughing.
Yeah, I mean, so we actually have a paper about this. We calculated how much area will be needed until 2054 to grow the seaweed with the protein enough to feed the population. Like, so there are areas which are not used completely today offshore, which can be reached within available already technologies for mooring and other methods. And this is like very small percentage of the ocean which could be used. And again, the growing of seaweed also can create environmental problems, at least in the oceans, because high density cultivation causes to different types of biomass degradation and methane production and so forth. So it can be converted actually to the big swamp in the middle of the ocean. And this could happen. So that's why there are a lot of projects done both on the European Union and others to plan how to grow seaweeds in an environmental friendly way, meaning that how there will be enough light available to all other organisms, for example, which are living there. So if you put a huge farm, so it's also create a shading to all the species who live behind it. So you need to put cages in the way that there is enough light coming in. So all these are real problems which exist, and the community is aware of them, and the solutions are coming.
Yeah, just to again, understand the areas. Obviously, we can't use the entire ocean. I don't know if it was a paper also from Alex, but somebody calculated if we would go into, for example, biofuel production, I think we would need 16% of our oceans to cover the entire fuel needs. I mean, that is a completely just a speculative number, but the oceans, it's just a massive area, much larger than land. It's actually weird that we decided to cultivate our food on land since there's not much of it. So you should think this way around. And it's often these projects in the European Union with risk assessment, we are destroying our oceans globally, taking people's food resources by massive fishing fleets that are paid by the European Union, and then we calculate if seaweed farming could at some point speculatively have a negative impact. So that's just hypocrisy often. And seaweed farming is very small still, and there's a huge potential, and it's far from being harmful. Even cultivation is a very to come to an extent where we take too much of the ocean is very we're far from it.
I absolutely agree, but I would still say it's good when we take care that we safeguard the oceans while trying to use them as food source and source for other sustainable and renewable materials. So I think this is really good, having this in mind, that the people more care about it. But absolutely agree, we are far from that point. And if I may, one comment, because you asked before what we ask from the governments. I think what really could be done from the political side is pushing more on the side that the external costs are more internalized, meaning so the costs which are done by normal food production. So in this case, we are talking now about food to our environment. That would help, and then we don't need to talk about other subventions and stuff, because this is not done as yet, and we know this is discussed with the true cost accounting and CO2 credits and other credits, but we are not talking only about CO2, right? We are talking about a lot more influence on our environment. And if this would be supported more by the governments, then also the upscaling of algae and integrating it into products will have even more dynamic. And it's making it even more competitive, obviously. And I guess the help to just buy some carbon credits somewhere should not be the solution. But obviously, it's hard to get this also all done on political level. But this would be very important for midterm.
Okay, yeah, so thank you very much. We are just about to finalize our session for today, and it was very, very interesting. I would suggest that we give a short outlook into the future of the sector. And I have a question for you all that would be very interesting to hear, is what needs to be done that algae gets his equivalent part in the planetary health diet, so that we are at one point there where we all want to be, that the future food system is in balance, and that we can really look into a bright future. Maybe we start with you, Alexandra, and then we go to Alvin, Eugene, Jakob, and Alex.
I was fearing that I have to start. So I think actually we are on the right way. I think the basics are there. There are already good developments. So companies which are there for 10, 15 years, which have the basics, which have the production, which have ingredients, biomass, and first CPGs developed. And to get this dynamic now even more, I guess we just need some consumer brands now pushing into the markets, like Jakob is starting it, and others will join and come and are there already. And I think really we are on a good way. And also, according from our experience now, we are working already with a lot of food brands and bigger food companies. So we see everybody is moving in the right direction. So yeah, just emphasize, move on, and let's do it together. But I think we are on the right track.
Thank you very much, Alexandra.
Okay, let's do a very quick round because we're running out of time. Alvin, a two-liner on the future and the what role algae will play in the food industry.
Well, I'll just say that I do believe that I'm lucky enough to see that algae will be a part of the next food mix, and it's going to be a part of it, not all of it, of course. And I think we have a lot of exciting people pushing all the boundaries so we can actually see it.
Awesome. Eugene?
There are two sets of fossil records just confirmed that microalgae is the mother or the father of all the plants and animals on this planet. Microalgae is really the genesis of all the living things on this planet. There are about more than 1 million different species of microalgae in this world. We're only studying about a few thousands of it, and the regulatory approved are only about 20 or 30. We're just scratching the surface. At all costs, I think we should really push hard to make microalgae or even macroalgae to be the most sustainable food source in the future. And that's what we're working on with this panel.
Great, very much, Eugene. Jakob?
Yeah, I mean, we have to make seaweed delicious and accessible and easy to eat, ready to eat for everyone. Our goal is to have it as popular and normal here in Europe and Western countries. Eating seaweed and having seaweed in products should be as normal as eating tuna or eating bananas or avocados. Not everybody was eating avocados in Germany 50 years ago, and now it's the case. So I'm very confident by creating attractive, delicious products, we will be there and very fast, because people are changing their diets much faster than they used to. Again, I already mentioned, if anyone wants to be part of that and wants to help us reach that goal and have a good impact on our oceans and make delicious food, then please check out our jobs. And that's the last thing I have to say about that.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jakob.
Alex, you have the honor to close this one.
Yeah, so I'll just tell you that the total amount of biomass from algae, macroalgae, is orders of magnitude less than what is produced today with crops. It's like 5 or 6 orders of magnitude. So I can just tell you, grow algae. Doesn't matter, micro, macro. So the more biomass we'll have, more ingredients and more food there will be out of different streams coming in. Just remember that we are just in the very, very tiny amount of what is out there from other sources. So again, grow algae, more the better.
Amazing last statement.
That wraps it up quite neatly.
Yeah, thank you very much for all the panelists for contributing such good insights and inspirational words. It was very, very good, and I was really glad to be part of the session today with you all, and looking forward to see you all at our next Future Food series.
Thanks, Fabio. Thanks to everyone here on the panel, and thanks to the audience, such an active audience, so many questions, and we'll try to get to those after the session. So there's still so many things to discuss. We know it's a big topic. It's many topics actually in one, and we tried to tackle this in one session, and we'll sure dive deeper at some point and talk about this, because there's so many exciting things to see and to do. Thank you all.
And if you want to be informed about our next session, then please feel free to follow ProVeg Incubator and Zintinus on LinkedIn. You will get the notice about our next session. Thank you very much and have a great day, evening. See you soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.